I'm going to talk about future followers. Future followers. I don't see a lot of empty chairs, but there's one here, another one here, a couple there in that row. I want to almost share in the next 20 or 30 minutes about who's going to sit in that chair. Who's going to sit in those 3 chairs right there, that single chair there? Who are the future followers? Who are the future followers? The questions we'll open with today: what does this story teach me about Jesus? How does it impact me personally? And is this requiring a response from me? What we're going to talk about today is this requiring a response from me. Matthew 24 verse 14 says, and this gospel, notice that word gospel, that means the good news, not negative news. Good news. That's what the gospel means, the good news of Jesus. Sometimes we can take the good news of Jesus and turn it into negative news. In 2017, Jesus is still good news. He's still good news. He said this good news or this gospel will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony, or in other words, as a story. Our name is Storyside for 3 reasons. Number 1, we believe that God writes great stories. That's the first thing. God writes great stories. If He picks up the pen in your life, doesn't matter how bad your past is, I believe He writes great stories. The second part of our name is we believe there's 2 sides to your story. There's the side before Christ, and there's the side after Christ. The third part of our name, Storyside, is that we believe there's a lot of people out there who may not believe a sermon, but they would believe your story. This good news, the gospel, your story, the testimony of this will be shared to all nations, and then, this is really important, and then what will happen? Then the end will come. Sometimes people will share with me, Pastor Micah, can you tell me all the earthquakes and all the famines and war and fighting, does that mean anything? Is there a spiritual implication there? Yes, yes, yes. This verse of Scripture right here, if you read all of the verses preceding it, it's going to tell you some of that. The Bible is full of warning signs that point to those situations and circumstances and say, hey, you need to be aware. Don't just blow these things off. But I think here's where the church could do better. Here's where you and I could do better. Instead of hearing about wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and famines and praying, God, please get me out of here. I love going to Friday night football and high school games, and in the sports world, just look at it as offense and defense. That sometimes we see all these things, the wars and earthquakes and storms, and the church goes on defense. Like God, just please help us to hold on. Almost like if we can just somehow limp to the finish line, let's just drag ourselves. When I read this verse of Scripture and I see that it's not just about what's happening around us, but it's about you and I going on the offensive to make sure our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends at school have heard about Jesus, have heard about hope. That there are individuals in your life right now that maybe some of these people up in Grow that share their story. For all you know, they're on your street, they're in your subdivision, they're working for you, working with you, that they may show up and get a paycheck, they may go through the motions of the week, but the truth of the matter is, someone's marriage is falling apart. Some parent is stressed out about their child. Someone has an addiction or a habit that's getting the best of them. And God positioned you in their world, in their sphere of influence, so that you could share the good news of Jesus with them. Did you know that 90% 90% of the interaction of Christ happened outside of synagogue settings or times at the temple. Over 90%. Don't rule out what God can do in your Monday to Saturday. Don't rule out the fact that when you're walking down that hallway, you're in that lunchroom, you're walking the sidewalk at night. Don't rule out when you're sitting in that bleacher or that stadium seat. Don't rule out that God doesn't have you there for a purpose. God is just looking for you and I to be sensitive to future followers. Who is it in your world that they're crossing your path that you don't have to understand Greek and Hebrew? You don't have to go to seminary. You just need to share your story. This was my life before Jesus. This is my life after Jesus. And I know if He helped me, He can help you. There are people out there that need to hear hope. They need to hear hope. The truth of the matter is, no church is perfect. You and I aren't perfect. We're still a work in progress. So when people say, like, church is hypocritical, you're like good one day, bad the next. Some days I've been bad multiple consecutive days. Anyone raise a hand and say, me too? I've never met a church yet that everyone's figured it out. We're all in need of Jesus. But why could we have 50+% of our nation totally opposed to the things of God? Is there something, because I think the number's even higher, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt for the sake of the study, that we could have tons of conversations about sports or politics, and yet for whatever reason we struggle sometimes to share our story, our faith. When you look at John 17, Jesus is praying a prayer. And it's very interesting. He says this in John 17, verse 50. I do not ask, this is Jesus praying, I do not ask that you take them, that's His followers, that you take them out of the world. What? I wanted to get out of here. He said, actually, I'm going to pray that you would keep them from the evil one. Verse number 20 is where I would get the title or what I hope is your takeaway today, that throughout the next few weeks you will think, is that a future follower? Is God bringing them into my life? Is that someone to sit in that seat? Is that someone that needs hope? Watch what he says in verse number 20 and 21. I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe. That's future follower. Verse 21. That they all may be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe. So Jesus is praying, and He's not, the average church in America is 76, and I'm not saying it's all about numbers. I'm not talking about stats. I'm just talking about a spirit of whether we're telling our story, whether we're sharing the good news. But Jesus did not build a church so that we could just have church stuff all the time. Sometimes if we're not careful, we forget the commission of Jesus Christ to go, share the gospel. Find someone who is losing it, falling apart, messed up, and give them hope. For God so loved He loved the world. Verse 17 of John 3 says, God sent not His Son into the world to condemn. Jesus didn't come to condemn the world. So when we're reading, I feel lectured, I feel judged, I feel that's religion that's taken on that mandate. Jesus said, I didn't come to condemn the world. I think sometimes in our lives, we need to ask ourselves, are we pushing away? Are we pushing away the people that God is actually trying to stretch towards? Trying to reach them? Like He has passion and purpose flowing out of Him And yet we're protesting. Come on, I want to help you today. He did not send his son to condemn the world. I think in religion, and this is all I've ever known, I've grown up in it. But I think sometimes he's wanting us to connect with people, and we're trying to condemn them, and it's tough to connect with people you're condemning. They're like, I don't even want you around. You never get a chance to share the good news because you're always so anti them. I want you to process some of what I'm saying, because it would be very easy in moments like this to say, Pastor Micah, are you telling me to do that and go there and say that? Not telling you to be conformed to the world. I understand, you got to come out from among, I understand all of that. But when Jesus is saying, I'm not even trying to take them out, I'm trying to protect them from the evil one, but then I want people to believe. There's some of you today as you're listening to this message, you are in the place you're in right now with God because someone was able to see a better you before the better you right now. Like someone saw grace in action in your life. Someone saw you then, but they're like, man, if God could ever touch her heart and her mind, I know that he could do that in her life. Don't ever lose your belief in the gospel. The gospel is darkness to light, down to a heavenly place. Don't ever stop believing that even the worst of the worst, the Bible says in Corinthians, they had addictions, they had habits, they had adultery, they had fornication, they had all this stuff. And such were some of you. Don't ever lose the fact that God's grace, God's mercy, God's Spirit, the staff would tell you that almost every week we'll get messages from people, and it's always intriguing to me because a lot of them, I don't number sins like what are 2s and what are 9s. I don't do that personally. I know some people do. I just think that we're all born into sin, Romans. We all got some craziness going on. There's occasional sin, but then there's habitual sin. It's all kinds of stuff, and we all need Jesus. And I can't change anyone, but I know he can change everyone. I do know that. I do know that. And we'll get people that will say, they'll message the church, are we welcome to come? Can we attend your church? What's your stance? And I always reply the same thing to them. This is what I believe the Bible says on whatever issue. They'll ask about multiple issues. But I'll say, this is what I believe the Bible says, but I want you to know I've never told one person ever they couldn't come to Storyside. I've never told one person ever. Because I don't, like if I stop believing this, I don't want to be a pastor anymore. What I'm sharing right now, if I don't believe what I don't want to pastor no more. And the belief is that anyone that comes into contact with Jesus Christ can experience life change. I don't care if they've struggled for a month or 50 years. I believe one moment, one day, one encounter with Jesus Christ can shift and change everything. Everything. When you look at these scriptures of Jesus saying that the world may know, verse 23, he says it again, so that the world may know. It's the second time he's praying this, so that the world may know. What if you could be the answer to God's prayer? I always say life moves at the speed of relationships. And sometimes if you actually built a relationship with someone before you tried to shove a tract down their throat. I've had people say, I don't leave tips, I leave tracts. And that's why people don't want to serve you at a restaurant. Come on, I want to help you today. What if you could be the answer to God's prayer? And you could share hope with Richland County, Knox County, Morrow County, Wayne County, Ashland County. What if there's someone right now in your world that feels like they're out of options? And yet you have the greatest answer to every problem they have. You and I, we are the light of the world. Mark 16, he said, go into all the world. If winning the world to Jesus was your job, would you still be employed. D.L. Moody, who was one of the greatest evangelists of all time, was reaching all kinds of people. And yet he had people that were complaining, people that were criticizing him. I know that's shocking because no one would ever criticize in our world, right? Someone came up to D.L. Moody and they told D.L. Moody, it was a lady, and she said, I don't agree with how you're doing it. I don't like your methods. I don't like what you're doing. You're reaching these people, but I don't like how you're doing it. And D.L. Moody looked back at this lady and said, ma'am, how do you do it? How do you do it? To which she replied, this has actually gone down in the history of the church. She replied, I don't do it. To which he said, and his response is what is recorded, his response was this: well, I like the way that I'm doing it better than the way you're not doing it. I've never claimed that we had all the answers here at Storyside, and my message is not about Storyside per se. I've never claimed we had all the answers. We've done backpack giveaways, winter coat giveaways. We've given away so many bikes through the years. We've done trunk or treats. We've done Christmas stuff, community stuff, parades and tomato festivals, and God only knows the stuff we've tried. And people could say, I don't know about, the candy thing, and I don't know about the zoo and animals down there and the thing. And I brought in a donkey one time, if any of you were here then, that I brought in a donkey. He was going to bring it up to the front, and it started making a bunch of commotion. Ended up like messing all over the floor, like not number one either. Stunk so bad they almost evacuated kids ministry. One of the worst decisions I've ever made. And in the last year, we've baptized 232. The youth right now is just cranking. It's crazy. We got 107 little leaders. I'm not going to pretend like we always do it right. But I like the way we're doing it better than not doing it. I would rather at least you and I give it a shot and say, you know what, the Bible says he ate with publicans and sinners, and people got mad and complained. I think there's always going to be people complaining about something. But I'd rather give it a shot. I heard the joke, I'm closing, but I heard the joke about the little girl that came running home one day, and she's like, Mom! She was all excited. Mommy! My name's in the Bible. And her mom said, oh, Edith. Edith, honey, your name's not in the Bible. She said, no, that's what the teacher said, that Jesus sat with sinners and Edith. As we close today, it was 1912. 1912, Scottish pastor, evangelist, John Harper. He was traveling to Chicago to take up his appointment as pastor of Moody Church. He had his daughter, Nana, on board the Titanic with him. His wife had died a few years earlier. When the Titanic struck the iceberg and began to sink, this blows my mind because I have 4 kids. I have 3 daughters and a little boy. I think, what would I do in that moment? If my wife had died and I have my kids with me, this is a testimony to his heart for the gospel, the good news, eternity. History says that John Harper put Nana into a lifeboat and then ran throughout the ship yelling, women, children, and unsaved, please get into the lifeboats. Women, children, and unsaved. The story goes on to say that John Harper took what could have been his life jacket. I want to believe, Pastor Ethan, I want to believe I could do this. I want to believe Storyside could. Can you imagine putting Judah Paul onto a lifeboat and believing in the gospel to such a degree that you would choose to sink in the frigid waters several thousand feet deep? You take my life jacket. Because I'm saved. And if you're not, I want you to have a chance to keep living until you make that decision. What? What? History says that Jim not only did he give his life preserver away, but as he's floating in the water, he would ask people, are you saved? Have you accepted Jesus? One part of the story is that there was a man that was floating by, holding on, and as John Harper was flailing in those waters, he asked him, are you saved? Have you accepted Jesus? And this man said no, he wasn't. When he was given the opportunity, he told John Harper no. Have you ever been told no before? I mean, I've reached out to people and sort of almost been like shot down a little bit. Have you ever had someone tell you no before? This part of the story is amazing to me. Because when you read the story, it's been shared in several different writings that John Harper, for a second time, the waves and the water brought him back around to the exact same guy. And Hunter, he asked a second time. That's why I think sometimes, even though we've maybe been shot down or been told no, doesn't mean we shouldn't ask a second time or maybe a third or fourth. The second time, John Harper looked him in the eyes, said, if you'll believe in your heart, the Bible says if you'll say it with your mouth, believe in Jesus, he'll save you. After that second time, Hunter, that man would tell later that he watched John Harper go under the water for the very last time. Never came up again. 4 years later, that man stood on a stage and shared how that when John Harper asked him the second time in those cold, icy waters, he prayed the prayer. And he said, I was John Harper's last convert. Go, tell, share your story, give someone a life jacket, believe when you see an empty chair that that's a future follower. And even if they say no one time, that doesn't mean that God couldn't bring you back around again. To share, to give, to reach. I know there are probably 160 million of them. I know they're probably thinking Micah's going to tear them down, you're going to tear them down, we're going to rip them. But maybe let's surprise them. Then instead of us condemning them, here, I just wanted to help. I just wanted to give you hope. Here, I don't want you to sink when I know Jesus can help you. You could be out of work, or you could be a multimillionaire. You need Jesus. You could be the employee, or you could be the employer. You need Jesus. You could be youthful, or you could be up in years. You need Jesus. We all need Jesus. We all need Jesus. And as I pray right now, maybe there's someone in this room or online that you need Jesus today. Maybe it's going to be for the first time. You've never really prayed that prayer like that guy's sinking, floating, holding on in those icy waters. You, like that man, you need Jesus to save you today. Maybe for someone else, you need him to spark in your heart the courage to share your story, to believe in future followers. Maybe for someone else, even like those players last night, your heart's just overwhelmed. And you would say, God, touch my heart today. I got a lot going on, and I don't want to do it alone. I can't even fix it by myself. I Micah, I'm offering you Jesus right now. You don't have to do this alone. He will help you. He'll help you.